Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at our favorite video, now play-in style, our player props video we've got for you today on this second night of the play-in games here. We've got the 9-10 version of these play-in games that we're looking at. So make sure you do check out Nate's great article up on playpicks.com. Got all the stuff you need. Man's working really hard right now with baseball, basketball, all the likes on there on playpicks.com. And also make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Got a couple other videos up for you, as we mentioned, those game videos. And also head to thelines.com. We've got that player props tool for you. Make sure you're getting the best props available out there from odds makers. Also giving you guys the chance to win an Amazon gift card at play.thelines.com. If you get that NBA Daily Pick'em Challenge correct, we will send you that $25 Amazon gift card. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight's play props. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, if you check out our game video on Hawks Hornets, we don't really like, or I don't like a total that's approaching 240. Yeah. But I do like that means, a little bit of more of a choppy game, more rebounds, more paint points for a guy, Clint Capella, who I feel like the Hawks have really been keeping on ice most of the season because of his injury history. Despite that, in his last 6, he's averaging 14 points, 12 rebounds, just playing 26 minutes per game down the stretch there. You look at the playoffs last year, he played 31 minutes per game. His averages weren't outstanding. I mean, just 10 points, 11 rebounds. Did have plenty of spike games, but his importance on both ends of the floor is there, and he should be able to get his against Charlotte because they've been so vulnerable against centers all season, especially giving up the second most rebounds per game to that position, along with the third most points. They give up the second most rebounds per game overall because they play at a blinding pace. And sometimes those threes are not falling, and that creates a ton of rebounding opportunities. I mean, if Capella gets 36 minutes, look at his career 36 numbers, 16.5 points, 14.5 rebounds. His prop is at 26.5 points rebounds. So, I mean, I feel pretty comfortable about that going over. It's only minus 110. For 36 last year, when he was maybe at his healthiest or at his best with the Hawks, 18 points, 17 rebounds per then. So he could smash this. He went for 20 and 15 in consecutive meetings with the Hornets back last year. And this, his most recent meeting, 17 points, 15 boards, again, playing limited minutes in that span. So we like the Hawks to win. We're just not quite sure about -5 here. So if you just want that money line, to go ahead and hit Clint Capella double-double in the win, plus 125. Feel really good about that. I mean, as long as Trae Young's getting closed out on so hard because the Hornets have really sold out to try to stop him, he will throw a lot of lobs to Capella. So hopefully that gets him to his 10 points because we know pretty much he's getting 10 boards. His prop is at 13.5 boards in this one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and to support your theory there, a reason for him to have increased minutes from those 31, 32 he had a game last playoffs. John Collins isn't playing tonight. So, there's definitely, his stats do go up a bit when John Collins is not playing this season, especially in his last 10 or so. He's averaging about 30 points and rebounds combined in those games. So getting over to 26 tonight for those feels right for sure, especially as he and Trae are going to be, I think, playoff Trae unlocked also means playoff Clint unlocked, which means a ton of pick and rolls, as we know, with Clint then rolling to the bucket. So some good opportunity for him there. Moving on to the West game for a minute, talking about DeJounte Murray, a guy we've targeted all season, going to go back to the well in a game that I think he and the boys want to win for the Gipper, if you will, as we all expect Pop to hang him up after he's lost this season, whenever that is. But his points, rebounds, and assists, I really like that at 41.5. It's really good odds, minus 104 on FanDuel. You can consider his points at 23.5. It's about minus 105 as well. So it's pretty much the same odds, but I like the ability to throw in the rebounds and assists with DeJounte. You can also talk about him to, get score 30 if you like, if you want those points over there at FanDuel. It's a nice plus 285. It's a nice way to find some juice there for DeJounte, who, the points is the thing about the points too, is there's, as we mentioned in the game video, 6 guys on this team that are averaging double figures, which also is in large part because DeJounte's diming up so much. But you look at his last 12 on the road, 24 a game, 10 assists and 7 boards there. The offensive rating is at about 123 and a half with a 27% usage rate. So super efficient with a ton of usage. He's just been incredible, right? Like you saw all his box scores since the All-Star break, and since he really needed to help drag this team into the playoffs. He did miss a few games and they lost their last 3, but he's back now and playing against NOLA. The last time he played there in February on the 12th, he went for 31, 7 boards, 12 assists there, about that 32% usage rate going up. So that that was the last game that it seemed like it was a close game. Then you had the one more recently, March 26th. He did go for a triple double in that one. 15, 11, and 13 there, which just under the 41 PRA. But I don't think they'll be able to hold him quite to that level tonight in terms of the 15 points there. I think he gets much closer to 20, and if he does, I would put him on triple double at watch as well, to be honest. At least a double for sure with those assists, in my opinion, at least 10 of those. And that's in large part because New Orleans is allowing the most assists per game to point guards in the last 7, and just over their last 3, allowing 34 assists per game to the opposing team. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for DJM to get in there and do his thing, points and assists, and always with the rebounds, at least 7 to 8 for sure.
Yeah, interesting to see New Orleans allowing limited points to point guards, but the most assists. To me, that shows me that Devontae Graham, who's not healthy when he's out there, is not doing a great job of stopping the offense or fighting through pick and roll. And then Jose Alvarado, when they go to him, is an aggressive defender who will pick up full court. And then if good point guards get past him, then they have their pick of the litter, and DeJounte diming people up every which way. So I like the whole combination there. Yeah, of the points, rebounds, assists. I think if you're gonna take points, you might as well take an alternate points line to get plus money, because when DeJounte gets going, he usually is gonna drop a ton of points here. And as much as the Spurs have good role players around him, they really are depending on him to score in this matchup. Same deal really for the other guy, CJM. If you're taking DJM, I'll take McCollum to get over 31.5 points and assists. Pretty good odds at minus 106 at FanDuel. Much better than him to get over 25.5 points, but he's been pretty good in 13 home games with New Orleans, getting 6 assists along with 24.5 points per game on a 30% usage rate. Playing just 32 minutes per game in those games, including 3 light loads down the stretch, as New Orleans knew they were pretty much locked into this spot. So when he's gotten a full workload, which he has against the Spurs in 3 games since joining the Pelicans, 35% usage rate, scoring nearly 30 points per game, 7 rebounds, 4.5 assists. Yep. And I talked about in the game video, I think a legit Spurs strategy is to say, all right, we're going to let CJ operate on an island. We're going to let him get his points, but try to shut down these limited role players around him. And if that's the case, then you might be looking at close to 30 points again for CJ. Just need a couple dimes passing out of that scheme. In the playoffs, his numbers are a little more modest because he's been playing with Dame Lillard his whole career in the playoffs, but still 23.5 points, 3.5 assists with a 27% usage rate. So you add a bunch of usage to that, and you go up against the Spurs team that, if DeJounte's covering him, how much energy does he have on the other end? And the Spurs, they have been vulnerable in the paint. They just don't seem to have much of an answer for CJ, at least in these 3 matchups, other than to say, let's just keep everyone else in check.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the assists are going to come tonight, especially when Brandon Ingram is playing alongside CJ. You mentioned they're 9 and 6 when they're both playing. More important for our player props, CJ's at about 25.5 points and 6 assists in that time frame. So right at that, the points and assist prop. It's mostly because his points prop is so high tonight, 26.5. They're expecting him to score a lot of points tonight. And I think adding the assist is a good idea. I could see a 23, 24, and 8 night for him tonight, right? Like getting a solid amount of assists tonight as they try to get the ball out of his hands. As you mentioned, they don't have much 3-point shooting outside of him. And Ingram's been a lot better this year from 3. But outside of those 2 guys, Devontae Graham, not as healthy as you mentioned, not as much 3-point shooting this season for them. them, and a big reason that I think they'll want to get the ball out of CJ's hands and into those non-3-point shooters, but that will open him up for some assists. So I'll follow you on the points and assists with that one for sure. Lastly, we're going to take an under. We keep talking about how we don't feel good about points in that Charlotte-Atlanta game. And one reason that I mentioned we don't like points, and one reason that I also like the Hawks to win, is Scary Terry has a very bad record against the Hawks this season. Terry Rozier. I'm taking under for his PRA, for his points, rebounds, and assists combined, getting about -120 on DraftKings at 30.5 there. And his points is at 20.5 there. I would consider that under as well. He averaged in 3 games this year against the Hawks. He is averaging 11 points a game, 4 boards, 4 assists, shooting about 15% from 3, 31% from the field, just missing all over the place. And the Hawks are playing pretty well against shooting guards. They're really bad against point guards, which Terry Rozier is not, especially with LaMelo out there. But he's playing off ball and way more on the wing. But they're holding shooting guards to the 6th fewest points per game this season are the Hawks. So that's one area that they are able to sort of defend better than in other areas for sure. Definitely with Trey being at the top of their opposing point guards, that's where they're going to give up a ton of points and stats in general. Look, when Terry scores under 15 points this season, that's happened, I believe, 21 times. They are 6-15 in those games. Are the Hornets another reason that we kind of think under some points? The key guys for the Hornets are not going to be putting up those numbers, and that's a reason that you would consider the Hawks winning, even if you don't love a 5.5-5-point spread. You definitely like them to pull out the victory.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. It's a bold call. If you want to be more bold, take a Trey Young under. These props are so high, and I like even more. You can get some alternate lines at FanDuel. You get plus odds all the way up to under 45.5 points, rebounds, assists. The man almost never gets any rebounds, so 42.5 is his points, assists. That's even money. Tack on the rebounds there. You can go as high as you feel comfortable. I mean, still -158 to go under 48.5 PRA. Because the Hawks have been good at home. They could run away with this game, and then you're sitting pretty for an under on Trey in any variety. And the Hornets have done a pretty good job limiting him scoring-wise. LaMelo Ball is a rangy and pretty good defender who can do a good job on him. And the Hawks just have more weapons around him right now. The only reason Josh is too shook to take it is because he lit up the Garden last year en route to that mythical playoff performance, and Josh is too afraid that he's going to repeat that.
Yeah, I mean, he still also had 30 the rest of the way, in points per game. I mean, it's not like the number 1 seed Philadelphia 76ers could stop him either, by the way. I mean, you're getting me defensive here. They were the number 1 seed and still couldn't stop him. But no, you're right. I mean, I am definitely, but that 42.5 points and assists, it's too much. It's too crazy. We can't go that high. That's too much. So
yeah, we got 2 road teams, 5-point dogs in both spots here. Charlotte +5 in Atlanta. That total bet down a little bit from 236.5 to 235. Also, same situation basically with San Antonio +5.5 in New Orleans. That total's been bet down from 226 to 224. And I agree with the betting public to say I'm not going to bet any overs in these play-in games. If you don't want to follow and bet an under, that's fine. But I'm definitely not banking on an over. When I see Minnesota put up 109, the highest scoring team in the NBA, it indicates to me it's a lot like the All-Star game when they switched to an Elam ending. It's just completely changes the nature of an NBA game down the stretch. It's just like win or go home. You are absolutely playing defense at every turn. The officials are letting you put hands on people, letting you slow people down. I mean, in the playoffs in general, you have to see these totals kind of drop eventually before you're willing to take an over, in my opinion. I mean, just looking through the Hawks game log in the playoffs last season, it's crazy to see that they went 12-5-1 to the under, and their overs, which only 2 happened at home, by the way, their overs are still, going to like 227, 228. They're not at this level, which we've become accustomed to in the regular season, which is to say, like, yeah, of course, Charlotte and Atlanta will get to 240 because they're going to be out there running and gunning and having fun. It's like, no, this is a big game. This is a playoff game. It's basically like a game 7. And Atlanta, as much as they've been better offensively at home in their last 12, 11-1 straight up, 125 offensive rating. Their defense is also better. 114 offensive rating. That's 4.5 points better, allowing 112, pace down to below 98. Those games averaging 235, which is exactly where we're at. And I know Charlotte is a team that you would expect to go above the averages for sure. But I'm a little concerned about them. I mean, they didn't show up in the play-in game last season. Those play-in games that did go over, which Josh reminded me of, they involved the Pacers and the Wizards, who were just playing at such silly season all year last year. The Pacers were just silliness, 153, 149. Wizards basically the same thing with Westbrook just pushing the pace at every turn. So I'm not really reading that much into that. I'm more thinking about the way the Hawks started the playoffs last season, which granted they were playing the Knicks, but it was defense. All of a sudden, Clint Capella, who I really think they've been sandbagging all year in terms of keeping him fresh, slow playing, if you will. I think he'll come out and protect the rim. Charlotte, not as efficient in the paint, not at all. I mean, they're scoring most of their points from beyond the 3-point arc, but Atlanta pretty good defending that at home comparatively. I mean, the numbers are pretty stark for Atlanta. As I said, 11 of their last 12 at home. Charlotte's been no slouch on the road and winning 11 of their last 15 to get into the playoffs, but I'm definitely leaning towards Atlanta here to win this game. I don't like 5 points, though, either, because, again, it's a do-or-die situation. So if you are comfortable betting an under or agreeing with me that these totals are too high, tease it up, 239, get the Hawks at -1. You should feel pretty safe about that. Or you can look at some of these player performance doubles we'll talk about a little later on.
Yeah, interesting. So you would rather tease the under up to 239 rather than tease that over down to 231.5, you're saying?
Playoffs.
I mean, yeah, you kept saying playoffs, and obviously Jim Mora's voice is running through my head. Playoffs, but this is the playoffs, and that does mean even the pace does slow down a bit. It's also just about the shot selection, some tired legs, people being able to put hands on you. I totally agree. The play-in games aren't necessarily the moment I'm targeting that strongly with that much confidence to go under, the way that I'm going to target an under in the next couple rounds that we start looking at, right? I mean, I feel like Vegas really is slow to adjust the total and the lines that they set for the totals in NBA playoff games until maybe the second, even the conference finals is really when they start to realize that things are tightening up. They've now been playing basketball since October. It's almost June by this point in the conference finals. And so, yeah, I think, tired legs start to come into play. You tighten up. It becomes a lot more about who can get their own bucket on a one-on-one matchup and just beat their man. And then you give the ball to that person each and every single time. Trae Young is that person. If you want to consider this an elimination game, he wasn't great in elimination games last season, even in that victory against that Game 7 that they beat Philly in 43 minutes. He still kind of struggled, and you saw a couple other guys take over, including Kevin Huerter, who went off, I believe, for 26 in that one. So I'm not necessarily using that, but he did have his struggles against Charlotte this season. I do think there's a lot of sort of individual performances that you look at in the matchup between these two teams this season, which there were 4 of them, so it's a decent sample size that you look at and you go, oh, okay, that under is ripe here. I mean, starting with Scary Terry on the Hornets, 11 points a game. So in three matchups against the Hornets this season, shooting 15% from 3, 30-something% from the field, just not having good games against a team that does not defend the backcourt well in terms of Atlanta. They do not have a good backcourt defense, obviously, starting with Trae Young, who is definitely at best a liability to a degree. So, I think that you start there. He didn't play well against them. Trae at 20 and about 20.8 points per game against them in his 4 games this season against the Hornets. Not good numbers against a team that also not great against defending the backcourt, but I mean, they do have size and length all over the floor, especially with, Terry and LaMelo Ball standing like 6'7". So there is going to be some, at least the ability to get a hand up in Trey's face on those pick and rolls. But I also do agree that Clint Capella's coming in, and the rebounding is going to be huge in terms of limiting things. Charlotte is a bad rebounding team. I mean, I believe they have the second worst defensive rebounding percentage. And the Hawks, they get offensive rebounds. I mean, they're still in the top 15 this season in terms of offensive rebounding efficiency, and getting second chance points. So that's an area that I think they will be able to take advantage of the Hornets as well. I too, though, I don't love 5.5. That's where I saw it originally. It is down to 5 on DK on DraftKings there, but I don't like 5.5 points for the Hawks, to be honest, because I do think that the Hornets are going to come along for points. So I kind of, if I'm teasing this, I actually prefer the inverse of the total and getting the Hawks maybe down to 1.5, so that because I do think they're going to win this game. But I kind of want that to go over 2. If this was at 230, I would hit it. So at 231.5 and a tease there, I still feel good about it because I do think that this game goes over 230, even if there is a bit of struggles on certain areas of the floor for a lot of the guys. I think Atlanta's defense, 3-point defense, slightly better at home. It's still bad. It's still about bottom 10, bottom 11 in the league on the season, no matter where they're playing. And Charlotte's just pulling, man. Right? They're chucking from 3. We know that, especially since the All-Star, the All-Star break. Interestingly enough, both these teams ending super well too. I do like the Hawks to win this game, to be honest with you. They're pulling a little bit of what they had last season, starting 17-25 this year, ending 26-14. Last year they ended about 25-8, I believe, in their last 33-ish games of the season. So they are coming on strong and sort of pulling the same routine as last season. The Hawks, however, 13-5 since Gordo went down. As we know, he's been out for 18 games now, and they've been pulling it together too. Their defensive rating gotten a little bit better, but they're still keeping that offensive rating near 120. So I do think with the pace that these two teams are going to play at, it just scares me. Definitely, like you said, I know you're not saying take an under. I just know you're now a little bit more afraid of overs. I think that yes, this game might tighten up, but I also think that the Hawks' ability to get to the free throw line in the fourth quarter will help them. I know Charlotte does limit free throw attempts, which does also help your case for an under there. But I think there's too many areas of the floor, including the 3-point line for on the Hawks side of the ball and Charlotte side of the ball, that I think there'll be some points to be had. I think Trey will get his to a degree, and that you'll see a lot from. There's too many guys and weapons up for Charlotte for that bad Atlanta offense to really be able to lock all of them up.
The bad Atlanta defense, you mean?
Defense,
yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not going to fight anybody if they want to, tease it down and get a 231 over. But I don't think it's a smart bet, just the way these playoff games are going, and the way the Hawks played defense last season when it got to playoff time. You got the same numbers here. They finished 26-14 this year after finishing 25-8 last year, carrying that momentum in. I mean, everybody knows that's how you win playoff games. It's not by running and gunning. And the biggest thing to support that is, the Hornets are all fun and games in 124 defensive ratings and offensive ratings when they're playing other teams that don't really care and or just aren't even like playing their NBA players down the stretch. But in their last 12 as underdogs, they're 8-4 to the under. The exceptions are, giving up 144 to teams like the Sixers and the Heat that are just juggernauts and can bully them down low. They've done a pretty good job on Trae Young, and he is the Hawks offense, like you said. So I think with LaMelo and Rozier hounding him, with PJ Washington being a very switchable big that they can use down there, I think they'll hold this Hawks offense down to a degree. But I also think that the Hawks will, there's not much playoff experience here. There's not much weaponry on offense for Charlotte other than the fact that they play at a blinding pace and try to get out and beat you or get free throws. I would take the under on their team total at 115.5, sort of similar to how we felt about Cleveland, Brooklyn on Tuesday. Look, we don't know if they're going to come along. And we would attack like a generally low scoring game with the favorite just exerting their will on that end. So, I mean, I'm on board with that. And I would actually look at unders for Trae Young. 42.5 points and assists is ridiculous. It's to a point, it's the mythology of the man and what he did at the Garden last year. I'm not riding that. 31.5 points straight up is too high. I'm not taking the overs there. That's the same way I feel about the game. I think this game will get a little choppy. And if the Hornets are able to continue holding Trae in check, I think we're definitely going under.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking yourself into under and the. I mean, honestly, I think you still like the Hornets, right? Like, if you're gonna choose either side of the line here, 5 just seems like a bit much for how well these teams are sort of matched up. Um, yeah, I mean, the thing is like activate playoff Trae Young, right? To a degree, it's like ice Trae time. I mean, if last playoffs is indicative at all, right? I mean, we're talking about 20, let's say 29 points a game, 9.5 assists. That still doesn't get you to that ridiculous 42.5 points and assists. So yeah, in no way, shape or form am I suggesting that somebody feel good about taking over 42.5 points and assists combined for Trae Young. It's just too much, but he did have a 35% usage rate throughout the playoffs in those 16 games. And he's shooting, not a great percentage from 3, but he's about 3 for 9.
Wasn't Bogey and Gallo out for like that whole playoff run though?
For a bit.
They got more
for a bit, and they have more now, and they're going to need more, to be honest, because they weren't great against the Hornets this season either. In those 4 matchups, 2-2, whatever. But yeah, I guess for the total, I do prefer a bit of a couple of teases, and I know we're going to talk a bit about the Western Conference game, and maybe you can look at incorporating some of those lines in there if you would like to get a tease, even a 3-teamer, if you feel good about getting the tease, the total one way or the other, and then honestly like figuring out how to either get the Hawks down to, it's got to be under 2 points for me to want to take them, or honestly getting the Hornets up a bit, because I do think they come along, right? I do think the Hornets come along enough to keep pace. I don't know what that sort of offensive efficiency will be throughout that pace, and that's the key here. But yeah, I still think that this doesn't have the feeling of a blowout for Atlanta in this one. Like we said, there's just too many solid matchups for both teams on the floor, very evenly competitive, and this is gonna be a fun game, man. I think we're gonna have a good time watching this one. There should be some good offense.
Yeah, we got both 10 seeds about +5 on the road. Spurs are getting an extra half point. The Hornets are +5 at Atlanta. That total's been bet down a little bit to 235, still pretty high for a play-in game. The Spurs are +5.5 at New Orleans. That total's also been bet down to 224, as people are gonna looking at the early results and saying, wow, these games are played a lot slower than the regular season games. There's a lot better defense. And if the Wolves are only going to total 213, the best team against the overall season, that's what they got last night with the Clips. I think we should be very reluctant to bet any overs in this do or die situation. There are numbers supporting the under here as well. That's not my preferred bet necessarily, but I do like the Spurs to cover with that under, assuming they're going to keep it pretty close. I mean, the first thing that stands out about this matchup is the coaching difference. Willie Green, I believe, making his playoff debut as a head coach for the Pels, going up against the great Greg Popovich. And interesting that these Spurs, they've met 3 times since the Pelicans acquired CJ McCollum. And I'm not really looking at anything about the Pelicans before the CJ trade because it's a completely different team. Their offense has been pretty damn good with him, that's for sure. I mean, but the pace has been slower. 97.5 down to 96.5 since March 1st. They've gone under in 6 of 11 games at home. The offensive rating is better at home, but the defensive rating also better. And that pace is the key. The key for me in looking at why the Spurs, I mean, aside from the fact that they've just covered in 7 straight as underdogs, that they've said, all right, the Lakers are going to bow out of this race. We will do our thing and just compete. Show our culture and at least, keep these games competitive. So, I mean, I like them to cover first and foremost, but I don't think that it's outlandish to think about them winning. The Pelicans, they've been great. They've blown out a few teams with CJ, but the key stat for me, they are 3-8 against the spread at home against playoff teams since acquiring CJ. So it's a bit of a different feel when you get a team that's well coached that can really gear their defense around stopping CJ and Ingram. And you remember that series? I mean, back 2005 or whatever, where the Spurs let Steve Nash get 50 points and they beat the Suns.
Yes,
that's still a Popovich strategy. I mean, the first meeting with this team, CJ and Ingram combined for 60, and they got nothing else from anybody else. and the Spurs won. And I mean, the second meeting, I don't know what happened. The Pelicans just dominated, 30-point win. Third meeting, Spurs again let CJ get all his points. Ingram was out, so they didn't have anything else, but they let him go off, and they won a low-scoring game despite DeJounte Murray shooting just 4 for 19, still had a triple-double in that game. So I just like the way that they're going to be able to move chess pieces, not the queen and the I mean, that queen's the only important one in chess. all the pawns, the way they're going to be able to move the pawns around the queen, so to speak, with DeJounte going up against CJ here. I trust what the Spurs can do more on the wings to limit those other guys. Pirtle on Valanciunas, not a bad matchup there. Like, they're 19-12 against the spread as road dogs. They're 5-2 straight up their last 7 on the road. They're also 19-12 to the under as road dogs. Pace is slowed down. They're 7th in fourth quarter defense. And I mean, the last thing about this matchup, they allow the second fewest free throw attempts per game, and Nola is getting the second most free throws per game. So I think they have the recipe here to just, even if CJ and Ingram go off, which we'll talk about in player props for sure, the Spurs have a recipe to just keep this game close and see what happens down the stretch.
Totally. And, speaking of those quote unquote pawns on the Spurs, I mean, yeah, there's a ton of guys averaging double figures. I believe it's 5 other guys besides DeJounte averaging double figures. Yeah, 6 total. So yeah, there's plenty of ways for them to score and attack. I do think this is a game that they can definitely cover. I definitely like the under. I loved it at 230. It's definitely been bet down even as we're recording this to 224.5. But I mean, the average score of games going on, all of their last 4 games is about 221, I believe, right? So well below the 220, even the 226.5 that it was just a minute ago, it feels like, and now it's already down to 224.5, and it feels like it's moving fast. And by the time this comes out, it might be closer to 221.5 or so. But that's about where I would, continue to bet an under. We said in the other game, we definitely aren't suggesting you bet an under at 235 or really in the Hornets and Hawks game, but this one feels a lot more tailored to it. You've got DeJounte Murray also, him being back. He actually missed a few games there. Him being back also contributes heavily to him being able to guard CJ. I believe he was in the top 5 in steals this season. He might have more than 2 a game into DeJounte. So he's definitely looking at an all defensive team as well. So, that's huge for them in terms of CJ, what he's brought to the table. We know what he's been doing for them, since he came along. But yeah, I think everything in terms of the way that these teams play, the pace that the Spurs have been going at the rate that they've been playing, dialing it down a bit and increasing that half court offense, which this is really interesting. And this is what I kind of wish I would have looked at more closely too in the Hawks and Hornets matchup, is just how good is your half court offense? And by the way, that's why the Suns should be the favorite for sure. As no matter where you're playing this season, the Suns have the best half court offense. But at home, the Hawks have the best home court offense. However, on the Spurs also are actually surprisingly good in their half court offense. If you look at their last 10 specifically, to end the season, they were in the top 10 in terms of net rating, in terms of half court play, both on offense and defense. So they're looking a lot better there. And like we said, they have 6 guys averaging double figures, so a lot more ways for them to score. Kind of a win-one for the Gipper kind of feel to it. I will say, look, talking about the spread, I wouldn't mind hitting the money line for the Spurs just for the juice there. But at the same time, I just feel really much better about the spread in a way that I don't really need to get cute with it, to be honest, because I do think that, yeah, this is one where you look at the numbers and against the spread for the Pellies, things are a little bit misleading. Yes, they're 9-6 when Ingram and CJ play straight up this season, but there's that 3-8 number against teams above 500 or teams that are in the playoffs. Can't say the Spurs are above 500; they're not even close, but they get a chance to still get into the playoffs. So yeah, I'm gonna hit that spread. I'm gonna hit the under as well, and just parlay those right now. Honestly, I got it at 226 really, so that's what I would like it for. But yeah, I think all the way at 224, I think it's still good for an under. I think once you get to that 221 number, now I'm kind of like I'm staying away, and I'll just hit that line for the Spurs there. Yeah,
well, that's where you go with the match/line total parlay, which I guess FanDuel gives it to you where it opens. If you go and find that in the popular tab, you can get Spurs plus 5.5 and the under for plus 180, and you can get them. Yeah, if the odds might change, but I don't think they're changing the number there. Interestingly enough, so you can also get the Spurs money line and the under and get like plus 750 if you're confident enough in that win. I mean, it is a coin flip. These games are absolutely coin flips when they're win or go home like this. So I have no problem trying to get that extra juice. Maybe, I mean, you just add that to the safer bet of the Spurs to cover. The Spurs have benefited from a little extra days off, 10-5 against the spread in that situation. That, again, speaks to the preparedness of a Greg Popovich team. They're number 7 in fourth quarter defense. So down the stretch, I think you could see this slowing down a little bit. Spurs playing better defense on those two guys after they've had to carry such a load. I mean, that's why the pace is slower for the Pels, right? Because they're like, we have 2 scorers. We need to keep it slow, keep them fresh. And it's a good explanation for why the Pelicans haven't covered or haven't beaten these good teams reliably. Is because they're tops in turnover rate. Since the All-Star break or their last 15 games, they're 1 or 2, depending on the venue, in turnovers forced. And the Spurs are number 1 in assist to turnover ratio. They're not going to hand you points. They're not going to throw the ball away in any way. So I don't think that there's a lot for the Pelicans to capitalize on here. Also, Spurs 3rd in field goal defense since they started this nice stretch on the road, allowing 111.5. But they are allowing a healthy 13.5 threes. Well, New Orleans is 29th in three-pointers made this season. They have very limited options with them playing that bulky lineup with Herb Jones and Ingram and Joe Val. So, I think the pieces are in place to continue that chess analogy for Popovich to play a defensive game and get that Spurs cover and the under.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, don't disrespect Joe Val's 3-point shooting. He made 7 in a game this season. Just a reminder to everybody. Yeah, it goes in sometimes. But yeah, no, the crazy stat there too for that money line. Just that the Spurs the last 4 times that they have been underdogs against the Pels, they won straight up, right? So Pop knows what he's about. Man knows his business. He's got his queen in place in terms of DeJounte Murray tonight, and I feel good about the Spurs' ability to cover and definitely a lack of points if you can get it at the right spot. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to check out those other couple videos we have up for you today, including the player props one. We're going to continue to bring you guys throughout the playoffs. And until we see you next, happy betting.